I'm bored, and let's look at another crash and burn moment from the Chud and Grifty pipeline. All right, so before we watch this clip, I just want to point out that the Star Wars fandom online is really toxic. I don't think anyone's going to disagree whether you think it's like people on the left, people on the right. It doesn't really matter. It's just a toxic fandom publicly. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people involved with Star Wars who are not toxic. I'm not saying that the entire fandom is toxic. I'm saying that the fandom itself online, the discourse online, is extremely volatile. There's a lot of arguing. There's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of pointing fingers. There's a lot of just garbage stuff going on when it comes to Star Wars. It's unfortunate because I love Star Wars. Like, I'm not a deep lore fan. I'm a casual Star Wars fan, a filthy casual Star Wars fan. But I love it, and I just hate to see any fandom fighting over stuff. Sorry, my phone buzzed there. I had to pause for a second. Anyway, before we watch this clip, let me explain to you guys what's going on. So there's a podcast, or there was a podcast called Nerd Theory that included Star Wars Theory and the Den of Nerds. Josh, I believe is his name. So those two guys came together. They did a Nerd Theory podcast. It was very Star Wars centric. They stopped doing it for a while, and then they started back up recently. I want to say this year they started up again doing this podcast. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe that's the timeline. Anyway, if you ever needed any more confirmation, if you've been watching my channel for a while and you know about this, if you ever needed any more confirmation that the money is drying up in this space, here's another big red flag. So what happened is about an hour before the latest episode of Nerd Theory podcast, Josh, Den of Nerds, texted Star Wars Theory and said that he didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And it seems like it was all over money. Let's watch this clip and then we'll talk a bit more about this.
Do people not know it's a business, not a charity work? Don't let nobody tell you what to do. YouTube is a business. I mean, anything can be a business, but if you're, listen, I'm choosing my words carefully here before I just open up my mouth. At the end of the day, people have different interests, right? If it's not worth his time, then that's okay. And that's what he chose to do. He has a certain number that he wants to make every show. For me, I don't care. I don't care what I make in the show. If I make $0 or whatever, I think 50-50 is a split decision. And that's it. Josh has a family and kids to support, so I see his side. But if you agree to 50-50, then hey, 50 is what it should be. Yeah, I see this argument. Do I not have a life too? Do I not have people I take care of? Maybe I don't share that publicly. Are there not personal things that I have to deal with, plus funding a film that's going to not make any money for people to watch for like 30 minutes and then forget about? Do I not have a team of 20 plus people that have children and wives of their own? Why is it always that I'm overlooked on my career on YouTube?
I want to point out, this is something that I've brought up many, many times, and people in the comments just ignore this. These channels, the way these channels function, the size of these channels, the team that work behind these channels, they all have to get paid. It's not the same as one person making a lot of content. I have to reiterate this. Myself and many other people that I have done streaming with on this platform, that I make content alongside on this platform, we do this ourselves. Let me reiterate that. Every bit of technical thing that goes on my channel is done by me. The artwork is done by me. The thumbnails are done by me. The research is done by me. The digging up the clips is done by me. Filming and editing is done by me. Everything that I do myself. So for me, the amount of funding that needs to be made through ad revenue or whatever, the bar is extremely low because this is not my job and I don't employ people. This is going to be, mark my words, this is going to be the biggest downfall for these larger channels, is they've grown so big they cannot function without a team. Nerdrotic, Critical Drinker, Geeks and Gamers, they cannot function without a team. I want to reiterate this one more time. They need a group of people to make their content work the way it does. The amount of content that comes out, the amount of editing, the amount of thumbnails, the amount of titles, the channel stuff they have to do, all the stuff in the back end, they have to function like a business. That is going to be the downfall of these channels, because they got really big and they thought, I want to turn this into a massive brand. It is hard to run a YouTube channel at a large scale by yourself. That is a fact. It just is. Unless you're somebody who is just, you enjoy doing it all yourself, and you don't give a fuck about like how hard you have to work on the outside before you get to all the fun stuff, which is the stuff we do on camera. So what he's saying here, what Star Wars Theory is saying here, is that Josh, Den of Nerds, isn't the only person who has to support a family and support people that work for him. He does as well. Star Wars Theory does as well. And this is not a critique of that. You know, I understand you get to be a large channel. You want to do merch. You want to make it a business. This happens. But then you have to also understand how fragile that is in the influencer space. These channels are going to be affected by this. We're seeing it. This right here, right now, we're seeing this happen in real time.
I don't understand where that comes from. And I time and time again, I show, put my heart on my sleeve. I'm extremely transparent with everything. And yet people like to overlook and I don't understand. And I don't get it. You came back to Nerd Theory like you didn't give a shit. Josh deserves it. You cry like a baby. Well, if he deserves it, then what do I deserve? If his price is $500 a show, then what's my price?
Okay. So $500 a show. Let's think about this. They agreed on a 50-50 split. I can gather is super chats. So a 50-50 split on super chats. I don't know what the agreement was with ad revenue or memberships or what that was, specifically on super chats. And they did that under the assumption, or at least Josh went into that under the assumption, that he would be getting at minimum $500 a show. Now, where would this number come from? I'm not a fan of Den of Nerds. I don't like him. I don't really like Star Wars Theory. But I would assume that number comes from some sort of standard, right? So it's either one of two things. You're going into this podcast and you're going, oh, how much should I be looking for each time I do one of these podcasts? You're going to look at metrics. You're going to look at the history of the podcast, how much you were making before, and you're going to set that number at, say, $500. I want to go into this podcast. I know that I can make $500 off of this podcast on a split on super chats, not counting ad revenue, memberships. I guess if they sell merch or whatever, I don't know, whatever that deal was. They weren't making that anymore. The podcast wasn't making enough for Star Wars Theory to split 50-50 and give Josh $500 a podcast. The money wasn't there.
I don't have a price because I just do it because I enjoy it. I don't care, right? I don't look at the show as a way to have to make this or have to make that. And I have a way bigger overhead every month than Josh,
I believe that. I believe he does have a big overhead. He's got multiple things going on. A couple things here. The reason why he doesn't care is because he's making money off of other stuff. He's making money off of, selling lightsabers and all of his other merch stuff and things like that. So he's making money off of that. That's why he doesn't care too much about the super chats. Secondly, he says it doesn't matter to him. He's just doing it. But then also just a second ago, he was complaining that he has people to employ and he needs to make money and he has value. So which is it? Do you care or do you not care? It seems like a lot of double talk here from Star Wars Theory.
Anybody, but at the end of the day, if that is his price, then that's his price and he's entitled to what he wants. And if that goes over the 50%, well, that's not something I can accommodate.
Interesting. So he's saying that they agreed on 50-50, which, by the way, if that is your agreement, you sign off on that. You're like, this is it. We're good. Bump fist, walk away from that. We're good on that. I don't think that's the only thing that went down here, right? I think the $500 price tag situation probably was a conversation that happened based on the amount of money that Star Wars Theory is capable of paying for Josh to appear on the podcast. I think there was something else going on there. That's me speculating. That's me going outside of all the information we have. It just makes sense, though. It makes sense that he would expect Star Wars Theory to fork over the difference in money if, for sure, Star Wars Theory knew there was a $500 threshold. Unless that was a new number that just came up out of nowhere, right? I also want to point out that once money becomes the driving factor, once that is the main reason you stop fighting for your fandom, it just reinforces what I've been saying, what a lot of us have been saying, is that these guys do it for the money. They're doing this for the money, not because they care about the fandoms, not because they care about Star Wars, not because they want to make culture better, not because they hate gay people, not because they hate black people, not because they hate women. They're doing it for the money. The money is the driving force behind all of this content. And once the money isn't there anymore, once the money dries up and you're not making what you were making before, once that happens, you got to start scrambling. So when these guys are at a level they're at and they're fighting over something like this, and it's becoming a wedge between the kind of content they're making, it is very obvious to me, and it should be obvious to all you guys, that the money was the only thing this was ever about. And the money is drying up. Therefore, these paper-thin friendships and business deals and grifty channels out there that are doing this, they're running out of ways to fund it. Star Wars Theory here doesn't care too much about that because he dipped his toes, almost his whole foot into the water of the Chud space and realized he's just going to sell merch. This is why Eric July is doing what he's doing. This is why Geeks and Gamers is trying to run a news site now and their own Rotten Tomatoes /Letterbox. The money in this grifty space is disappearing, and it's happening a lot quicker than I thought it would for some of these large channels. It's happening a lot faster. Hate cannot sustain a business. Outrage cannot sustain a business. Once all of that is gone, once you get rid of that, it comes down to whether or not people are going to show up, have a good time with what you're doing, and be supportive of what you're doing. And clearly the mixed messaging here, all the anti-Star Wars stuff that a lot of these guys have been on, it's not resonating with people anymore. They're tired. They're exhausted with this. They're exhausted. And throwing money at strippers, after a while, you're really hungry and you want something to eat. So you're throwing out your dollars. You're making it rain on them. Where are the results? Where are the results? Has Kathleen Kennedy been fired? Is she gone? Y'all been saying that for a while. Do they have a new people in charge of making Star Wars content? Is that going to happen? No. Has culture shifted dramatically in Star Wars? Not really. So you spent 10 years in this space with this kind of rhetoric and nothing has happened. And people have been throwing money at you guys for a while. And they're not getting fed. They keep tipping you guys for a change to culture, and that change to culture is not happening, and they're moving on with their lives. Some of them are aging out of this. They're losing interest in it. Some fans are just tired of listening to it. And this isn't me speculating. We're seeing it right here. That's what's happening right now. You have two channels fighting over super chat money in order to show up for a podcast. One of them is saying that they don't care about the super chats because they have a lot of other money in other places, non-culture war related. Then you have another person who relies solely on the culture war, leaving the podcast because they cannot make an agreed upon amount on super chats from hating Star Wars. This is where we are. It's falling apart. If you guys ever wanted to smile and have a good day about something, this is your time. This is your time. We're seeing channels lose subscribers now that do nothing but hate on media. We're seeing podcasts explode, implode, fall apart, unravel because of the money situation. It's only going to continue to be downhill for these kinds of channels, and they're going to get more and more desperate. Keep an eye out for that.